Hey everybody, what is going on? Hexlex here. I got another Master Duel video for you. So it is time for, once again, This Week in Master Duel, where we cover all of the more recent announcements and just overall happenings, within the last week within Master Duel. As always, we're going to start here in Client to take a look at the notifications there. We do actually have a pretty cool official announcement that's not in Client that we're going to take a look at. After that, we have some leaks, and as always, we'll go ahead and wrap up with the tournament results. So, gonna get started off with in client, although we don't really have much. There's been exactly one notification for within the last week, and it is for simply additional Duelist Cup missions. So, yeah, I think it's just like 20 duels, right? Oh, you know what? I actually do know that that is what it is. So, yeah, it was just these missions here for some more additional gems. As you can see, I did my 10 games. So I'm not really going to bother doing 10 more for 10 gems. I talked about this on stream, too, when we did these missions, but I can't stand when Master Duel and games in general do this. Like, you know, front load like the vast majority of the rewards into the literal front half of the mission, and then 10 gems for the back half. It just doesn't make any sense. I don't understand it. But like Konami, I'm used to wanting to waste my money, but my time is another thing. But in any case, let's go ahead and take a look at Master Duel meta now, because again, that's literally all we've got. So I'm gonna go ahead and switch my screen capture over. Beautiful. All right, we're actually going to start over here with, this is actually an official announcement. It's not in client because it wasn't announced within Master Duel. It was actually announced on the recent OCG Times stream. So in the OCG, they will often drop streams announcing like new cards coming out and all that fun stuff. So here, Konami has announced a new selection pack, Record of Noble Spirits, via the OCG Times stream, which will be released on October 30th, 2023. So that's going to be on, that's Monday, right? Yeah, that's just a few days away. Oh yeah, we even have a countdown right up here. So that's pretty wild. Don't really know, when was the last time we got an irregular pack? I think it was actually recently though. Wasn't it like that anime pack? But yeah, definitely wasn't expecting another new pack this soon. But I'll be interested to see what's in it. We know exactly one card for sure that's going to be in it, which is going to be the Prisoner Princess of Fruitful Flames. Now, I'm actually glad I waited on talking about this announcement, because I know some of you might be thinking, Hex, you're kind of late talking about this. Like, people have already been talking about this card for the last few days since it got announced, and yeah, I mean, I usually just do my news segment generally the same time every week, which is why I didn't cover it sooner. But I'm actually, again, glad I didn't cover it sooner, because this card first got kind of announced on like the PlayStation, I think it was the PlayStation Store page for Master Duel. They just showcased the art and nothing else, and people were freaking out, and the phrase that got thrown around a lot was Master Duel exclusive card, Master Duel exclusive card, and I still see some people saying that. That's not what this is, by the way. As the next line states, this pack will feature the debut of the new Link monster, Prisoner Princess of Fruitful Flames, which releases in the OCG set Phantom Nightmare on October 28th. So this card actually does drop in the OCG before Master Duel. Now, this card is actually still unique because it's coming to Master Duel just 2 days, only 2 days after being released in the OCG, which is definitely a first. And I'll be interested to see if Konami ends up doing this with any other cards in the near future, but it's going to have a summon animation. No other cards have yet been officially announced for this pack. So now that we've kind of talked about the announcement, let's talk about the card itself a little bit here, right? Prisoner Princess of Fruitful Flames is a Link 3 Fire Fiend Link Effect monster with 2,700 attack points. It's got 3 Link arrows, of course. They point left, bottom, middle, and right. Its materials are very generic, only requiring 2 or more effect monsters. The card states you cannot special summon monsters except fire monsters. You can only use each of the following effects of Prisoner Princess of Fruitful Flames once per turn. During your main phase, you can special summon 1 fire monster from your graveyard. If a monster or monsters is special summoned to your opponent's field while this card is in your graveyard, you can target 1 fire monster you control and 1 monster your opponent controls, destroy them, and if you do, special summon this card. So I love this card. From a design standpoint, I think this card is very well designed, and I think that more generic extra deck monsters / cards in general should look a little bit more like this. So Some people say that they don't like generic cards because they think it restricts deck building. And I kind of agree with that to a slight extent, in that, yes, there are some generic extra deck monsters that are so powerful that they overshine like certain archetype boss monsters. And I think that, archetype boss monsters should generally have a place within an archetype above like generic stuff. I don't disagree with that design philosophy. However, there are some people who kind of take this opinion to the extreme. I don't agree with. Like, I don't think that generic cards should be like unplayably weak. Then I think everyone just kind of ends up using only archetypes, and I think that's really boring personally. If every deck ever is archetype blocked, no, I think that'd be very boring. This, I think, hits the sweet spot though. This hits the sweet spot of being a strong and compelling card that's also generic, but is not very likely going to overshadow a lot of other more unique or archetypal boss monsters. For one, although this card does have completely generic materials, it does still have the requirement that you can't special summon except fire monsters. So, it's not like any deck can just abuse this for link climbing. But fire-based decks can still use this to great effect while link climbing. Rescue Ace in particular can link climb rather effectively with this. Now, granted, again, you can only link climb into fires, but I think that's fine, and I think there's definitely a place for that. One thing that's pretty cool, too, about the ladder effect is that although it triggers when a monster is special summoned to your opponent's field, you don't have to destroy one of the monsters that was special summoned. You can just destroy any monster on your opponent's field. But it only procs when a monster is special summoned. Also, destroying your own fire monsters can potentially be very relevant. Particularly, I'm thinking like Fire Kings, right? Fire Kings proc when destroyed by card effects, so being able to pop your own Fire Kings with this card to not only pop an opponent's card, but then also bring this back and then trigger your Fire King effect seems really cool. So, I know this isn't like the most generic card, like it is, obviously intended for fire decks, but I think this kind of generic attribute support is pretty cool. And again, it's cool too when it's strong and compelling like this card is, but not like broken, not going to necessarily overshadow like other fire archetypes. So good stuff. I think this card is sick, and I'm looking forward to seeing more stuff like it in the future. All right, so we have some unconfirmed leaks. That last announcement was actually confirmed by Konami. This, however, is going to be one of Decade's unconfirmed leaks. We have a couple of Sophia Chord cards, Virtual World, B Trooper, Libramancer, and some Constellar cards. I'm going to go ahead and briefly overview them. I'll read out their effects, and the ones that I can speak to, I'll talk, I guess, a little bit about, but I gotta be honest, the majority of these archetypes I do not know intimately well, right? So, the new Sophia Chord Link 3, or Sophia Solfa, I always want to throw an I in there for some reason. Grand Solfa Colia is a Link 3 Light Fairy Link. Requirements are 2 or more monsters, including a Pendulum monster. It's got 2700 attack. Gains 100 attack for each face-up Pendulum monster in your extra deck. The activated effects of Pendulum monsters this card points to cannot be negated. Once per turn, when your opponent activates a card or effect, as a quick effect, you can special summon 1 Sulfa Chord with an odd pendulum scale from your Pendulum zone to your zone this card points to, and if you do negate the activation, then you can add 1 Sulfa Chord Pendulum monster with an even scale from your deck to your face-up extra deck. So, this card has some pretty nice, like, generic pendulum support, being able to basically stuff your pendulum summoning because it's in the zones it points to, and that's where your pendulum summon for the extra deck is to a link monster zone. So if you pendulum summon while this thing is up, the stuff you put in its zones won't be able to be negated, which is nice. But it's obviously got some pretty good support for the Sulfa Chord archetype as well. I know the Sulfa Chord is all about odd and even pendulum scales. I don't know enough about the archetype to know, like, if you'll often have an odd scale in your zone, and also if there's like a particular even scale you want to summon. But regardless, being an Omni Negate that also pulls a Pendulum monster from your deck into your scale seems pretty good to me. And I would expect that this card would definitely see a lot of play within the Sulfa Chord archetype. They also get a quick play spell that says, it's called Sulfa Chord Symphony. It says apply these effects in sequence based on the number of face-up Sulfur-Cord Pendulum monsters with different names in your extra deck. If you've got 3 or more Sulfur-Cord Pendulum monsters you control, gain attack equal to their own scale times 300. If you've got 5 or more, you can destroy 1 card your opponent controls. Then if you have an odd pendulum scale in your pendulum zone, draw 1 card. And if you have 7 or more, you can special summon a Grand Sulfur-Cord monster from your extra deck. So again, I don't know enough about the archetype to know off the top of my head how quickly they can fill up pendulum monsters in their extra deck, but I would say if you can reliably get 5 or more on like your first turn, then I think this card ends up being very much worth it as like a reliable turn 1 tool. I mean, yeah, being able to pop a card your opponent controls and then I imagine more often than not draw a card seems pretty good. And then of course if you have 7 or more, you're just off to the races. But again, I just don't know how easily they can actually get cards face up into the extra deck. That super affects the playability of this card. So 2 very nice cards for that archetype. Virtual World. Virtual World gains a new archetype. Virtual World Tiger FU. I know that's not how it's pronounced. But it is a worm rank 9. So Virtual Worlds have an in-archetype rank 9 now. In the past they used VFD, but this card gains the following effects based on the number of Virtual World gate cards you control. If you control 2 or more, this card can attack directly, and if you have 4, this card is unaffected by activated card effects except for Virtual World cards. In addition to that, once per turn as a quick effect, you can detach 1 material from this card and target 1 effect monster you control, and an effect monster on the field with a different type and attribute from it, and you can negate their effects until the end of this turn. So, even ignoring the Virtual World Gates effects, right? This card is actually a generic rank 9 that offers some amount of monster effect negate. The only real condition on it is that you have to negate a non-earth, also non-worm monster if you only control the Virtual World Tiger. Now, that's still pretty easy, right? Like, most monsters aren't worms. I mean, obviously, but Sword Soul aside, that's really the only archetype where you really wouldn't be able to reliably negate something based on its type. Now, based on the attribute, might be a bit of a different story. Earth is like a decently common attribute right now. We got Keshia Fenrir running around. We got Epperly Plump running around. So there are some key cards that you won't be able to negate, but, within any given archetype, except for, unless you're facing like Vernier Sylphs or something, you should be able to find a good non-earth monster to negate. But again, that also just assumes that you're targeting specifically the tiger itself. You can, of course, also just target another monster on your field, but I kind of read this effect assuming that I'm going to be using the tiger and not assuming I have other cards in play, because then you're talking about a whole extensive combo line, etc., etc. But the continuous effects are worth noting as well. It's not that hard to have 2 Virtual Gates in play, so this card being able to attack directly potentially makes it a really, really good Zeus pilot for the deck. The unaffected ability is obviously really, really good, but having to have 4 Virtual World cards in play is, Virtual World Gates, rather, because the Gates in particular are the spell and trap cards, right? So that's a bit of an ask, to have 4, and make this card actually be like a Noir or a Pep. I think the way to think about this card is don't think about it like a Towers, because actually making this card into a Towers, again, I don't think is feasible or realistic. But think about it more as a monster effect negate. Now, is that worth actually making a rank 9 in Virtual Worlds just to have honestly, a conditional monster effect negate? I don't know enough about Virtual Worlds off the top of my head to know that. I imagine you probably still slot one of these in. But I don't know if you go out of your way to make it. It's just like if you happen to be able to, this might not be the worst thing in the world. So, Bee Troopers get a level 5 fusion. Bee Trooper Cruel Saturnus. It is a dark insect fusion that takes a Bee Trooper and any insect monster. It's got 2400 attack, 2000 defense. You cannot special summon monsters except insect monsters. You can only use each effect of the following effects of Bee Trooper Cruel Saturnus once per turn. If this card is special summoned, you can add a Bee Trooper card from your deck to your hand. If an insect monster is banished face up accepting a damage step, you can target one of your banished Bee Trooper monsters and special summon it. So, Again, if I knew more about the archetype, I could speak more to the ladder effect. I mean, obviously getting just a search for any B Trooper card seems pretty good. And if you're doing any amount of fusing that deck, I think you would consider making this card for that search. I don't know how often B Troopers actually banish stuff, but if they do that reliably, this might be a good extender in that regard as well. Seems like overall just a pretty good generic searcher slash extender for the B Trooper plays. Libramancer Origin Story is a continuous spell card that says when this card is activated, you can set one Libramancer spell or trap card directly from your deck, except Libramancer Origin Story. Libramancer ritual monsters you control gain attack equal to their own level times 100. If a ritual monster is ritual summoned to your field, except during the damage step, you can target a spell trap card your opponent controls, destroy it. You can only use each of these. You can only use this effect once per turn. You can only activate one of these cards once per turn. So, I mean, this seems like a pretty easy add for any Libramancer deck, right? Like, being a ritual-based deck, being able to search your spell and trap cards, obviously very relevant, and the additional effects are nice bonuses that you definitely like to see, but of course this first line of text is the main reason you probably just jam 3 copies of this card into a Libramancer deck. I don't really know that there is much more to say about the card beyond that. Yeah, it just seems like a pretty good card overall. Alright, we have a whopping 4 Constellar cards to cover here. They are Constellar cards, but they're also Teller Knight cards, right? Because Constellar and Teller Knight are actually different archetypes, even though they are linked by more cards, but these ones as well. But anyway, Teller Knight All-Terrain, or Altair-Ran, is a level 4 light warrior, 1700 attack, 1300 defense. It's also always treated as a Constellar card. If this card is summoned, you can target cards on the field up to the number of light and dark Xyz monsters you control, destroy them. If a Teller Knight or Constellar monster is special summoned to your field, except this card, or except a Teller Knight All-Terrain, except during the damage step, you can special summon this card from your hand. Also, you cannot declare attacks for the rest of the turn, except with Xyz monsters. You can only use each of these effects once per turn. Each effect of this card once per turn. So, yeah, I don't know. This card, I do know a little bit about Constellar and Teller Knights because I played them back in the day. They're just kind of like a rank 4 kind of spam archetype, basically. I don't know that this card really solves that deck's archetypes. Like, this is a good going second card, being able to potentially pop 1 or more cards if you have, you know, light and dark Xyz monsters. But it's like, I don't know. Is that really what Teller Knights needed? It's weird too because like you want to use this as an extender, right? But also you only get the pop when the card is summoned. So it's like, you could argue that this card is multi-use, but I think it's just a little bit conflicted in its uses, right? Because like you want to use this card as an extender while you're making those Xyz monsters, but again, you only get to pop stuff if you summon this while you control Xyz monsters. I don't know. I think this card is weird. I don't think it's bad, but I do think it's weird. They have a rank 4, a new rank 4 Teller Knight Constellar Catechus, a rank 4 light warrior, 2 or 4 level 4 monsters, 2500 attack, 1650 defense. If this card is Xyz summoned, you can target 1 Teller Knight card and or a Constellar card in your graveyard, add them to your hand. You can banish 1 Teller Knight or a Constellar monster from your hand or deck and detach 1 material from this card. This effect becomes that banished monster's effect that activates when it is normal summoned. You can only use each effect of Teller Knight, Constellar, or Catechus once per turn. This is one of the more interesting boss monsters I think I've seen in a while. Being able to copy effects that proc when the monster is normal summoned is very unique. But of course, it kind of had to be worded this way because a lot of the Teller Knights, their effects do proc when they're summoned specifically. Also, being able to grab back multiple cards from your graveyard when this thing is Xyz summoned is pretty good. Yeah, I think this card is very cool, and I would expect to see this card in literally any Teller Knight or Constellar deck, or both. Seems overall pretty good. Teller Knight Liran is going to be a level 4 light warrior, 1200 attack, 1600 defense, always treated as a Constellar card. If a Teller Knight or Constellar monster is normal summoned to your field, except Teller Knight Liran, except during the damage step, you can special summon this card from your hand. If this card is summoned, you can add 1 Teller Knight spell from your deck to your hand. You can only use each effect of Teller Knight Liran once per turn. I think this card is definitely better than the other main deck monster. It's got the same... Well, no, it doesn't have the same Yeah, because this one is... Oh, this one specials itself in the hand if a Tellarknight or Concealer is specialed to your field. This one specials itself if one is normal summoned. That condition is, I think, overall easier to proc, and the on-summon effect here is definitely much better. Being able to add a spell as opposed to popping cards per the number of Light and Dark Exceeds monsters you control. Again, I just think that's really weird. But being able to add spells, much more relevant. Yeah, I'm much more up on Loran than I am All-Terrain. Consolidate Tellarknights is a continuous spell card that says when this card is activated, you can special summon one Tellarknight or Concealer monster from your hand or graveyard. You can target one Tellarknight or Concealer Exceeds monster you control. Special summon from your extra deck a Tellarknight or Concealer Exceeds monster with a different rank. By using that Exceeds monster you control as material, you transfer the Exceeds materials to that card. You can only use each of this. You can only use this effect of this card once per turn, and you can only activate one of these per turn. This card is probably one of the best main deck support cards for this archetype. Definitely, I think, more so than the other two monsters here. So, of course, being able to special summon your stuff from the graveyard or hand is pretty good. But being able to not just rank up, but really rank change any of your archetypal Exceeds monsters, super, super good for this archetype. Constellar and Tellarknights are kind of about ranking up and like doing different like Exceeds ranks in general, and then a lot of those Exceeds monsters will have effects if you like used another, you know, Constellar or Tellarknight Exceeds monster as a material. And it's also, I think, the fact that you summon a monster with a different rank, so it's not just ranking up, you can rank down too if you need to, which is very, very cool and very good, I think. So overall, I think of the Tellarknight cards, again, not the most familiar with this archetype, but reading them at a glance based on what little I do know, I think this spell card is going to be like one of the more powerful new support cards we're getting. That and the Exceeds monsters seem pretty good to me. So, okay, those are all the new cards. Now, I'm going to go ahead and just run through some of these tournament results a little more quickly. I'm not going to stop and read out every deck list that we see here, but Decade Meta Weekly that happened this weekend had 130 participants, and we're seeing a very wide spread of top 16 decks, which I think is indicative of this meta. I know a lot of people don't like this format because a lot of people don't like Kashtira and or Pearly. That said, as far as deck diversity goes, which is something I personally value, I think we are in a pretty good meta. And I also think that while Cash and Pearly can be a bit annoying, they are not like oppressively powerful by any means. There are still a lot of people who say Arise Heart is too oppressive and annoying, and that might be the case if it can hit the field, but when it comes to Kashtira, that is actually a pretty big if, you know, so. And it's like all these people who leave comments, you know, God, when I played Mathmech especially, God, the comments of like, it's a little cope to play a graveyard deck in a cash meta, don't you think? It's like, one, no, we're not in a cash meta. Two, like, a lot of people were so focused on if Arise Heart hits the field, but it's like, okay, if I play against Kashtira, if I go second, if they actually have a hand they can play, if I don't have disruption, if I don't have a board breaker, if they summon a Rise Heart, then yes, we might have a problem. But that's 6 ifs. That's 6 hurdles you have to clear. And it's like, I don't know. It's just, my whole point is like, it's not going to happen every single game. It's not even going to happen every game you play against Kashtira. Like, yes, a Rise Heart is annoying, and maybe it does need to be dealt with. I don't know. But I don't think the amount of complaining about it is warranted, personally. But in any case, again, I've said this so many weeks in a row now, we might see the meta decks eating up some more of the top slots, although actually we see Scareclaw right next to them here. It ends up being Scareclaw that ends up winning out the tournament. As usual, it ends up being these more rogue decks that people tend to know better. I'm very sure I've seen level 100 Crobat on this deck before, right? No, maybe not. But in any case, I don't doubt that they know the list well if they can win the DK Meta Weekly with it. So cool stuff, good stuff. I know I've seen the name level 100 Crobat around before. I wasn't sure if they were the Scareclaw or a Scareclaw main rather. Let's see, we got Cash here. Plunder Lab, that's cool. Oh, I think I actually saw people in my Discord talking about this deck. Madolche is doing very well here. We got Sky Strikers with the Hamp too. It's interesting. Actually, a searchable Kaiju does seem pretty good for this deck right now, to be fair. Here's Pearly in top 8, kind of their lab list here. Yeah, Pearly and Lab didn't seem to only taking a couple of like top 8 slots. Got Valence, got one of the tier limit decks. Here is one of the Pearly lists. Saucy Senpai! Saucy Senpai with Twin Sprite Lab. That's interesting. That's good. Always gonna have a fun Twin Sprite variant when Saucy Senpai tops. Got a flow list here. Here's the other tier list. Dragon Link. Here's the other Scareclaw list. And yeah, there we go. That was the biggest tournament, like by far, that happened this week. Some of these other ones were a little bit smaller, but we'll go over them briefly anyway. Master Cup actually did have quite a few Cashier list topping. A lot of lab lists too. This one is a little bit more indicative, right, of what you would expect to see. Cash Lab Pearly, but despite Cash Lab and Pearly taking 13 of the 16 slots here, it is Dragon Link that wins out. So again, people who say it's cope to play a graveyard deck because there's so many Cashiers, the graveyard deck won. So I don't know. And then yeah, we have Despia coming in second. Followed by, then we have Cashier coming up third and fourth. So yet again, even though we're seeing, here we're definitely seeing Cash Lab Pearly eating the vast majority of top slots, but first and second place are none of those decks yet again. Alright, here's a couple of the cash lists here. More of the cash lists. Looks like Herald of the Abyss is a pretty popular call for a lot of these. Wow, that's an interesting Dark World package in this Pearly deck here. Yeah, Herald of the Abyss seems to be putting in a lot of results here. You got the Cola Cup here, I like that name. With some Evil Eye Labyrinth shenanigans going on here, that's pretty cool. Punk doing very well in this tournament as well. Interesting that they're playing the Ascend of Thunder in addition to the Kashira stuff, but obviously seemed to work out pretty well. Spirals coming in top 4 here as well. Following it up with a branded tier list at 60 cards. Wow. Also playing a bit of a Cashier engine in there as well. Neat. One more list we'll take a look at. One more tournament. Because there was this one, but this was like a singleton format, which is like cute, but I don't know. Not relevant to Master Duel's current meta. This Factory Cup with 46 players. Dio Branded. I recognize this name. I've seen this player around playing Branded, as the name indicates. Got a Pearly list here, Bahamut with Pearly, and even more Pearly in the top 4. Wow. Got some Pendulum Magician action going on here. Looks like we have a cash list and another cash list, and as well as, what is this? Sword Soul. Neat. Alright, so that's going to go ahead and do it for this week in Master Duel. Hope you all enjoyed it, and yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing this new selection pack and what else comes along with it. But that's going to go ahead and do it for this video. Let us now move to our outro. Alright everybody, that's going to do it for this video. Thank you for watching all the way to the very end. That means a whole lot to me, and it's also a fantastic way to support the channel. And if you're interested in supporting the channel in other ways besides YouTube, there are plenty of ways to do that. If you check out the description below, you'll find a bunch of links down there. One of them goes to my Patreon. You're actually seeing the names of everyone subscribed to the Patreon on the screen right now. So if you're interested in getting your name in the credits here at the end, if you want to see more daily Master Duel content, or if you're interested in one-on-one private coaching sessions, I offer all of that on Patreon. I also stream live on Twitch. Feel free to go ahead and click that link and follow and or subscribe there. I also have the Discord community, if you want to follow that link, where hundreds of duelists have already signed up. Free to join, and you can just come hang out, talk about the game, and chill in general. Final link that's going to be in the description is my Twitter. You can follow that if you want some more notifications of what's happening with the channel. So, all in all, thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you have a fantastic day.